Hi everyone, today we are going to talk about romance scams and sign of a trauma bond. This is the part 2 of my previous video called Online Romance Scams, Signs that You Are Being Groomed, where I went through the red flags of romance scams, and you have the link in the description. I think it's very important to be able to identify when you are being scammed because there are very little recourse. And the sad thing is that the scammer will usually move on to another victim. So the best solution is prevention, because repair will usually be very difficult and if not impossible. So we went through the red flags that you can usually see being played when you are being scammed. A few other signs that will tell you that you're probably in psychological manipulation of a scammer. You know, they are hurting, but you can't let go. You make excuses or blame yourself for their behavior. You sacrifice your wants and needs for theirs. You feel addicted to them and you just can't let go. There's also this nagging little voice that you've been given so much to them already that backtracking seems like the worst thing. Seems like renouncing to your hope and everything you have invested, and it's extremely difficult to do. So now I think it's quite important to understand what in the first place got you to find yourself in such a situation. I would like to take an example I found really striking and interesting. It's this Netflix documentary called Bad Vegan. And this is the story of this woman. She's beautiful, intelligent, and she has this very successful New York vegan restaurant where she's making good money. Suddenly she meets this guy, and progressively the story is she is going to give, I think, circa $2 million to the guy, and she will basically lose everything. I think the psychological mechanisms are very interesting. You can see that this woman, she's trapped, she's miserable, and she's putting herself in situations she hates. But she is going all the way in sometimes in the most ridiculous situation. There are some people commenting around her former employees and various opinions. And some of them will think, well, she was probably in a fraud because she didn't pay the employees. She borrowed a lot of money to people that she was not able to refund in the end. But I do think, from my own experience and from what I've seen, the case I've been taking, I don't think she was in it. She was aware of it, but I think this is the typical illustration of a trauma bond. And here's the thing, when you meet such a fraud, and hopefully you won't leave $2 million to it, but this could be seen as an opportunity to raise the awareness of something that is inside you and attempts to be repaired. When you have a trauma bond, it's like a leak of energy that is being provoked usually early in childhood. And these scammers, these predators, they just can sense the leak of energy. And they go straight to these people because they know they will be able to take from them. They can see your weakness, they can see this immediately. We are very backwards when it's to identify and to sanction that kind of scam. There is no acknowledgement in the justice system. The difficulty is that the scammer will get you to give everything of your own volition. It's not really consensual in the sense that there is a struggle power, there is a psychological abuse, but it's extremely difficult to recognize. And this is playing not only at the individual level, but also at the collective level. You can see many manipulation and getting the consent of people to do things that are not necessarily good for them, but because there has been a grooming that has been taking place anyway. So trauma bonds are emotional bonds with an individual and sometimes with a group or an entity. For example, you can see that also at the level of cults, are arising from a repeated cyclical pattern of abuse, and the abuse is reinforced through rewards and punishments. At an individual level, this is the typical dichotomy between the love bombing, oh, I love you, you're extraordinary, I've never met a woman like you. I'm sorry, I'm always taking the example as a woman, but it can be seen in both sexes, of course. And then suddenly the person shifts his attitude to something more aggressive. It's like walking on a chain. It's very destabilizing, and it just creates repeated small trauma. You don't know where you are and you are completely disconnected from yourself. The trauma is usually perpetrated on a victim by an abusive dominator in a one-way relationship. The trauma bond always involved a power imbalance and an interplay of good and bad treatments which reinforce the trauma over and over again. Now, for example, I had a client. She was divorcing from an extremely abusive husband. After weeks and sometimes months of discussion, okay, she felt a relief. Okay, we're going to come to an agreement, something reasonable. And at the last minute, he would not sign. And then he would negotiate down. And he did that for 2 years. So she was going from one hope to another hope. And her mental health was getting worse and worse and worse. And the worst thing is that the lawyers couldn't see it. So anyway, typically in a romantic relationship, one might experience moments of love bombing followed by silence. Completely inexplicable silence. You're left wondering and craving for an answer. And this is where the manipulation is really playing. Trauma bonding can be found between parents and children in romantic relationship, incestuous relationship, hostage situation, sex trafficking, as I said, even on a collective level. Every time there is an authority abusing power. Trauma bonds are based on fear, domination, and more than anything, unpredictability. And as the trauma bond sets in and deepens, the victim is torn between conflicting feelings, anxiety, numbness, grief, hopelessness, and despair. Another thing that can be seen is the victim usually struggles with a lack of self-connection and understanding and internal compass. They will internalize the abuser projection as a reflection of themselves. They will make you believe stories you will end up owning, although they're nothing like you are and they do not represent who you are. I have a few videos, and I will put also a link in the description below, that helps you to reconnect with yourself and go away and start to heal the trauma bond. It's not going to happen in one podcast. It's a long process. But then, once you start the work, you will see that in your experience, you will attract less of that type of people. The long-term effect of trauma bonding can go way beyond the toxic relationship. Often it leads to real mental health issues, episodes of depression, low self-esteem, bipolar disorders, and may lead to transgenerational print. And that might be one of the saddest things. If you think you do experience trauma bonding, and you have children, when you heal yourself, you heal your generation. And I've seen it. And this is not something I say lightly. The impact you will have on yourself, the generation to follow, and to the world is very important, not to be neglected. Be aware that getting out will require duress and difficulty. And probably you will need help. And you need to remove yourself entirely from the situation, and more than anything, connect with yourself. So thank you for watching Romance Scams and Signs of Trauma Bond Part 2. I hope you liked the video. If I'm helping just one person, really happy about that. Don't hesitate to share. If you think that it could help somebody, please do subscribe to that channel. I don't post very often, so this is the best way not to miss a podcast, and you can opt out whenever you want. Until next time, bye.